What do you think the perfect solve would include, apart from a lot of luck? Great look ahead? Amazing solutions? Super fast turning? Well, those are all good answers, but how do you actually build those skills? Well, I spent the last month trying to answer both of those questions, because I don't want you to get a really easy scramble and mess it up because you haven't developed one of these skills. So let's get into the 5 cubing skills you need to achieve a perfect solve. Starting with skill 1, which is complete knowledge and understanding of cross and F12 techniques. And by this, I don't just mean, oh hey, I can do the R''FR thing to insert this edge here, or look at this cool F12 trick. I mean knowing all the important concepts ranging from how to preserve pairs in multiple ways during cross, to pseudo-slotting and everything in between. Cross and F12 are the most important steps of your solve. Cross sets the tone for the rest of the solve, and F12 is the most time-consuming step. Together, they give you the most creative freedom with your solutions, which means that you can get really good solutions, but also makes it easy to mess up, because there's no set way of doing it. I'd highly recommend having a more in-depth look at each of those elements of cross and F12 that I mentioned before, and I'll link some videos in the description that you can have a look at it. But if you want, you can wait a few more weeks for something extra special that I'm going to release, which will cover all of those in depth, and much more, including the second skill, which is sufficient alg knowledge of all of the most important advanced alg sets, like ZBLL, ZBLS, and winter variation. For those who don't know, I'll quickly explain what each of those are. You can skip to this timestamp if you already know what each of them mean. ZBLL is where you have a cross on top when you get to last layer, and you do one of 472 algorithms to solve the rest of the cube in one look. ZBLS is where you're about to solve the last pair, but you have edges misoriented on the top. What you do there is you do one of 302 algorithms to solve the last pair, and gives you that cross on top so you can go straight into a ZBLL straight after. Winter variation is where you're again about to insert your last F12 pair, but this time you have all your edges facing up on top, and the pair is already like a joined case. Here you do one of 27 algorithms to solve the last pair and OLL in one step. Now you're probably thinking, but everyone says ZBLL isn't worth it, and yes, that is mostly true. Before I explain, I will state that there are some cubers who have recently gotten very good official results, mainly from China, with full ZBLL and ZBLS, which is absolutely mind-blowing. And while people like them do prove that this method is viable, in most cases and for most people, I'd suggest stopping at the T, U, and L sets of ZBLL, some basic ZBLS algs, and some easy winter variation cases. These easier cases are usually quite similar to algs you probably already know, meaning it doesn't take too long to get the hang of them. And through continued repetition and solving, the recognition for these cases gets easier too. The reason I say T, U, and L for ZBLL is because for the other sets, it's either faster to do OLL and then a PLL alg, like soon for example, or the recognition time that it takes to recognize the case cancels out the amount of time you save by doing the ZBLL alg in the first place, meaning it's not worth it. On the other hand, T, U, and L mostly have cases with pretty easy recognition and simple enough algs, meaning they're definitely worth the effort. The next skill is having muscle memory of how pieces move around the cube and where they end up after certain common triggers. This is extremely useful for multiple important smaller skills like last layer prediction and faster planning. It also drastically reduces the importance of look ahead when you don't need to worry about tracking the pieces because you just know where they'll be. Another important thing to bring up here is knowing where pieces will end up specifically after certain common triggers, like RUR', sledge, hedge, RU', and so on. Most moves you do in F12 are a trigger of some sort, so if you already know where your pieces will end up after a certain common trigger, then you can figure out pretty easily where they'll end up after you solve your next pair. Building this is one of the best investments of your practice time and effort, and the main thing I would suggest to focus on for basically any sub 12 cuber. The next most important is definitely the next skill, number 4, which is flawless super fast turning. This one sounds pretty simple, just be like this guy here, but there are still some important things here which could be holding your turning back. Firstly, make sure you turn with the tip of your finger, don't bend it like this. This goes a long way in making your turning more controlled and stable, and might have a bigger impact than you might think. Secondly, don't rely on corner cutting, and don't put too much force into each turn, because these both make your turning unnecessarily choppy. In general, consciously make sure you complete each turn fully before trying to start the next one, and you should be fine. Another important but commonly overlooked element is picking the most ergonomic finger tricks that allow you to turn at high speeds. Two things that can help with this are alternating your hands frequently, and using your fingers to do a push or a flick move if they're already in position to do that for your next move. Another quick side note is that PLL time attacks are a great way of improving your turning at high speeds, because they allow you to get in a lot of repetition with fast feedback. Alright, let's move on to the next skill, which is amazing planning. Again, this one sounds pretty simple, but it's actually more complicated than you might think. This one can be built alongside skill number 3 very nicely, because while you're improving your skills and being able to know where pieces are, you can implement it straight away and make this skill easier to tackle. The main thing you want to do here is to give yourself the extra time to plan a little bit further than you currently do, whether that be your full cross and inspection, cross +1, or even cross +2. The main thing here is to push yourself a little bit outside of your comfort zone, because that's where you make real noticeable progress. Congratulations on building all the skills you need to achieve a perfect solve. Now if you want to learn a bit more about the specifics of the first skill, you can watch this video here to learn where you need to rotate in F12 and when you don't.